everybody, welcome back to Mixtapes episode 2. Thank you guys so much for those of you who tuned in to last week's episode where I answered all of your guys' questions. Thank you again for all of the views and for those of you who remember to subscribe. As promised, today's episode will be about how I do my eyebrows. If you follow me on my personal Instagram at RhodesFergie, I drop some hints throughout the week of some of the products that I'll be using today. So let's go ahead and get into those and then we will get into the tutorial. So the first product that I'll be using today is my very favorite product to use when doing my eyebrows. It's the Anastasia Dip Brow Pomade. It comes in like a little jar like this. Don't let the size fool you because this stuff lasts a very long time. I'll show you my old one actually. And that's after 2 years of use. The only reason why I got a new one is because I left the lid off and it dried out, so make sure you don't do that because that stuff will dry out and it's a lot harder to work with. The second thing that I'll be using is a tool by Anastasia. It is the number 12 combo brush. It comes with a spoolie on one end and an eyebrow brush on the other end. This one has a bit of a shorter bristle on the brush side of it. For me, that just gives me a little bit more control whenever I'm actually creating the line of my eyebrows. And then the spoolie, of course, is just awesome to kind of have there. You don't have to keep switching brushes just to use your spoolie and then switch back to your eyebrow brush. It's all here in one. This costs about $18. I get mine from Ulta. The pomade as well is only $18. So if you think about it, you're getting 2 products for $36. That sounds like a lot, but if this stuff lasts you for over 2 years, you save yourself a ton of money because I know me personally, I go through about 5 pencils a year. So there's that. The third product that I'll be using is actually my favorite concealer. It's by NYX. It's the Can't Stop, Won't Stop. It comes in this really cute little kind of lip gloss tube here. This costs only $5 from Ulta, but you can also get NYX at like Target, Sephora. But this is a concealer that I'll be using. You can use whatever concealer that you want to use. Just make sure that it's a couple shades lighter than your actual skin tone. There's a couple of other things that I'll also be using that I did not feature on my page. And a flat round brush to actually apply my concealer. I'm going to be using the Morphe M421 brush. It's just a regular flat rounded short bristle brush. Again, to give myself a little bit more control whenever I'm trying to really get those fine, crisp lines on my eyebrows. I'll also be using my favorite baking powder, and I'll show you how and why. The powder that I actually use is the Revolution Luxury Baking Powder. The color that I use is Lace, but they have 2 other colors. One is more of an ivory fair color, and then the other one is a lot more chocolatey copper colored. Fuck, I had something else to say about this. Okay. So those are all the products that I'll be using. Those are all the tools that I'll be using today. So let's go ahead and jump into the tutorial. So the first thing that you want to do is take your Anastasia number 12 brush and use the spoolie to kind of comb your eyebrows out and get them nice and straight and going in the direction that you want to take your eyebrows as much as possible. Mine are a little janky because I haven't got mine done in a while, so please excuse, but I'm going to do my best. So you want to brush up on the inside parts of your eyebrow and brush your remaining part of your eyebrow in the direction that you want your arch to go. If the inside part of your eyebrow hairs are a little bit too long and whenever you brush them up they're just kind of sticking up, you can take up a little pair of sharp shears and just trim them down a little bit. It doesn't look like I need that right now, so I'm going to skip that step. Again, brushing up in the inside part and then brushing out. Okay, and we are ready to start applying our product. So now take the same number 12 brush, take your Dip Brow Pomade and get a little bit of the product on the actual brush tip itself. Just kind of tapping in there like so. Make sure that you don't have any chunks of the product on there or else that's going to look terrible. So I just take my lid and kind of rub some of the product off and then get that nice flat creamy consistency on my brush here. And then I will start in on my inside bottom line of my brows. I start with my left brow all the time. I don't know why, that's just my preference, but I feel like everybody has their preference on what eyebrow they start on. That's mine. I want to start a little more inward because we're going to pull it out to kind of create somewhat of a fade effect later. But for right now, I just kind of start about pretty close to the end of the inside of my eyebrow and just create a flat line with some steady strokes coming outward. We're just trying to build a straight and consistent line if we can. I'm dipping in for a little bit more product. I got some chunks, so I'm going to again wipe off into my lid. And you will reuse this product, so don't worry, and I'll show you when we reuse that. Okay, so we're gonna keep going on our brow, the bottom line, following the shape that we want to create with our eyebrows. And pull downward about the length that you want your tail to come out. You kind of want it to be about, I forgot what angle this is, what is it? Create like a 30-degree angle between flat and your eyebrow in the corner of your eye here. Go in and fix any little areas that you think need to be filled in a little bit more, just to make sure that your line is straight. Okay, now that we've got our bottom line on our eyebrow, we're going to now go in and start to create the tail of the brow, which to me is kind of like the second most important part of your eyebrow. I feel like this part here that I told you I'd come back to later is the most important part, but your tail is just as important if you ask me. So you, again, take a little bit more product, make sure there's no chunks, and start from the bottom one that you created and work your way up, kind of always coming down to that same point. Moving upward until you kind of hit where you would consider the top of your arch. I think my top is about here. So I go in and I create lines until I reach about this height here. Always coming down to that same point. If you have to pull your point down a little bit, that's fine, because your concealer is actually what's going to come in and correct any mistakes that you make. So feel free to mess up a little bit on purpose, if you will, just to make sure that you get that nice full look for your eyebrows, and then we'll correct it, erase anything that you mess up on later. Okay, so I've got a pretty good definition on the tail of my eyebrow now, so I'm going to start working on the top part of my brow and filling in the rest of it. Again, we're not going to work on this inside part of our eyebrow to the very, very last point. Not dipping back into my product a little bit more, getting any chunks off again. The technique that I use on the top parts of my eyebrow differs from what I do on the bottom parts of my eyebrow. I kind of start to create some hair-like strokes on the top of my brow versus the bottom, where I create that straight across the line. So you're going to kind of start from your arch here and create some hair-like strokes in the direction that your hair grows. Mine kind of grow downward at an angle, so that's the way that I do my strokes. Also, I kind of go above where the top line of my brows are, because I like the definition that the concealer will create later on by erasing any excess product. And just like on the bottom, stay away from the ends of the top of the brow as it comes here. I'm going to stop there and just kind of fill in on any areas that I think didn't get enough product. Share the love, y'all. Share the love. Okay, so I got the product all applied, and now I'm going to start working on the fade effect that I create on the inside of my eyebrow. There's nothing uglier than a hard boxed eyebrow right here. It's not flattering, it's not cute. There's like no point of even doing your eyebrows if that's what you're gonna do to them. So I will show you how to fix it. So that product that we were smearing on our lid is what we're going to use, because you really don't need much product on the inside part of your brow. You're just gonna use very, very little and create kind of an airbrush look. So take very little amounts of that product out of your lid. Don't apply much pressure whenever you're doing this part of your eyebrow, again, because you want it to be very light. So take it from the bottom line, barely applying pressure again, and what you're going to do to create that nice even look is work from the bottom, and as you're doing strokes, move up, move down, move up, move down. Don't stay in one place too long, because you're going to create a really hard line, and that ain't cute either. So bottom line, moving up, moving down, moving up, moving down. You get the point. I'll shut up now. Okay, and don't be afraid to take it out a little farther than where you want your eyebrow to actually stop in the inside part, because again, the concealer will correct it. On this eyebrow though, you'll probably see some funky things going on throughout my videos with this eyebrow because, little story about me. So when I was younger, I had a chickenpox here and it actually left somewhat of a scar. So there's a little bit of scar tissue right here, and that does not play well with my eyebrow products. So it's kind of tricky to work with. Sometimes I can get it good and it's popping. Sometimes it's like, oh. I think we got it pretty good today because you can't really see it too much. So I pulled my eyebrow in, moving up and down with very, very lightly applied strokes. And you can kind of start to see that fading look, if you will. It goes over a little bit too far, but I'll bring it back over to where it needs to be after I use my concealer. So now from this point, what you want to do is just make sure that this eyebrow looks, for the most part, exactly how you want your eyebrows to look. Again, there can be some mistakes as far as being up a little too high here, being a little bit too long back here, and being a little too forward on the inside part of your eyebrow, because the concealer is going to go in and correct all those mistakes. So the reason why you want this eyebrow to look okay before you move on is because this is actually going to be your template when you're doing this eyebrow. It's nearly impossible for your eyebrows to turn out the same every single time that you do them. So what you want to do is make sure that at least they match one another. So I'm going to go in and just make sure that everything looks how I want this brow to look, and then we will move on with doing the other eyebrow to mock this one. Okay, so we got this one looking kind of how we want it to look for the most part, and we're going to move through the other eyebrow pretty fast, so you guys feel free to follow along with the steps that I showed you on the first eyebrow. I'll get this done really quickly for you, and then we'll wrap up the look at the end. So now that we have our pomade applied to our eyebrows and kind of have the general shape that we're going to have as well, we are now going to go in with our magical eraser, aka our concealer, and our flat round brush. Again, I'm using the Morphe M421 brush, but again, you can use whatever concealer that you want. Just make sure that it's 2 shades lighter than your skin tone at least, and then a flat round short bristle brush, so that you can make sure that you maintain control, because this is where you're actually going to be correcting, so you don't want to have a messed up eraser tool, otherwise you're going to have messed up eyebrows. Get it? Okay, so the first thing that I do is I take my concealer and I apply a little bit of the product onto the side of my hand here, and I'm going to take my flat brush here and just dab a little bit of the product on both sides. Okay, so you're going to take it and you're going to start on the bottom, backside, or the bottom of the tail of your eyebrow, and just kind of clean up any mistakes that you can kind of see. Boom! Look at that! Look good. Look good. So if you can kind of see, that eyebrow had a major mistake kind of right here. The pomade kind of went way outside of the line that I wanted it to go, but this magic eraser trick really clean that bottom part of the eyebrow up. So now what I'm going to do is clean the rest of the bottom of my brow, and we will move to the top. Again, you want to do very, very light strokes on this part of your brow as well, because all you're doing is correcting. You're not really doing any hard defining, as long as you made sure that you've got as much definition as you could when you applied your pomade. So this is just very light cleanups, like so. They look good. So I got the bottom of my brow cleaned up, and now I want to get more product, and we're going to go in and correct the top of the tail. So This is where I'm going to actually create and define my sharp point. Whenever you're actually taking the concealer and pulling your tail down on the top side, it might actually push some of the product down below. So feel free to go back on the bottom and just kind of clean any of that up. And there's my point. And I'm going to start on the remainder top part of my brow, getting a little bit more product on my brush again. This is probably the hardest part of cleaning your brow up, is the top, because it's a very weird angle. Here you can kind of get a good angle and go upward. Here you kind of gotta adjust, but you want to start with the back side, closer to your arch. I do a little bit of longer strokes on this part of my eyebrow because I don't want to have any kind of choppiness to that line. And we're looking good so far. So now I'm going to go in and just fix any little minor mistakes I see, and we'll move to the next one. Alright, so we got this one pretty cleaned up. I forgot, actually, there's another step that I do with my baking powder here. First, you want to make sure that you have a mini beauty blender, the little small ones like this. I buy mine in a pack that comes like this from Ulta. I think there was like 5 in here or something like that. 4. And this was like $4 or $5, so very, very cheap. It's the same thing as a big beauty blender, just smaller, so that you can get tinier areas or even in like the creases of your eyes here. I just got mine a little bit wet, squeeze out all of the extra water. Now what I'm going to do is tap very, very lightly just to get any of that excess concealer off. Don't press too hard because otherwise you're going to really mess up your line of your brow. Okay, and then take a very, very light amount of your baking powder. I pour mine on my lid like this. I take a tiny, tiny bit like that. Oh, that's probably too much actually. I don't have any excess powder on the sponge. And now I'm just going to very, very lightly press that into the outer part of my eyebrow just to seal that line in there. The reason why I do this, not everybody has to do this, but for me, I'm super, super oily. And what that means is that when the oil gets to popping, my eyebrow lines get to bleeding. So, not literally bleeding, but you know what I mean. Okay, so I've got this eyebrow locked in, and now I'm going to move to my other one. So now I'm going to move to this eyebrow here. Feel free to follow along with the instructions that you just learned about cleaning up this eyebrow, and then we will wrap up the entire look at the end. Pretty cleaned up on the outer lines of the brows. I'm going to work on making sure that these get pulled back from the inside. Okay, so take your brush and just get a very little amount of your concealer again on both sides and just kind of apply it in the middle of your brow. And then with that same motion going back and forth, just kind of tap into the edges barely. This is just going to kind of play into that whole blending aspect that we're trying to create here in the middle. And last part, just make sure that the bottom corners and the top corners of your brow match up here, because there's nothing uglier than a thick brow here and a thin brow here. I think this one goes down a little further than this one. Okay, now I'm gonna go in with my Anastasia number 12 brush, use the spoolie side, and just kind of lightly comb the inner parts of my brow to blur any of those harsh lines or edges that we have. Okay, and that is our eyebrows. I'm going to tie this look together and see you in just a second. Okay, so this is my final look after all the rest of my makeup is applied. I did want to note though that I noticed that I forgot to show that I had sealed the lines of this eyebrow with my setting powder in the sped through video, so I just want to let you know that I did do that with my setting powder, went in with my mini beauty blender and set that. Thank you guys again for tuning in to my second episode. Check out the links below this video if you would like to look into any of these products and items that I've used today. I will be coming back with episode 3 next week and announcing the topic throughout the week on my personal Instagram page. So be sure to follow me on my Instagram @BroIt'sFergie. Make sure that you subscribe, like, and I will see you next time on MIXEDtapes.